And I think we're ready to begin. So let's just start with a moment of purification. We'll do this before we do our meditation. So again, this is our opportunity to kind of check in with ourselves and to become aware of just anything we're carrying or holding on to that might be a hindrance in the meditation. So for example, for me, I've had a full day, a busy day. It's been a good day, but it's been kind of a rush type of day. A lot of things happening. So sometimes I'll become aware when I sit down on the cushion when I'm about to start my meditation that I'm still a little kind of uptight from running around or a little agitated. And just by noticing that, just by being aware of it, you can say, all right, well, I'll let that go. I'll see if I can just leave that here so that I can meditate. So this checking in and this purification, it's really, it's not a moralistic purification. It's just checking in to see if there's anything that you're currently carrying or anything in the mind that would be helpful to let go of for the duration of our time together. And then you can pick it back up again, but you'll be able to do it more skillfully and you'll be able to approach it with some wisdom. So with that said, just invite everybody to think about that as I ring the bell. Let there be peace. Let there be peace. Let there be peace. Welcome, everybody. This bell, it's called a Vajra bell. Usually the Vajra is this little thing on top, which represents a lightning bolt, represents enlightenment, and this is a Tibetan bell. There's a neat scene in the movie Kundan. If you've never seen that movie, I really recommend it. It's about the life of the 14th Dalai Lama, the current Dalai Lama. But there's a scene where there's a group of monks walking in a straight line, and they have a little boy, a novice monk, who is in front of them, and he's got one of these bells, and he's ringing it as he walks to kind of purify the path, to get rid of all the evil spirits and things like that as this group of monks are walking. And then they all have their eyes closed. So they're following this little boy, and everybody's kind of got their hand on the next person's shoulder. And so the little boy can have his eyes open. And so he rings the bell and purifies, and all the monks follow with their eyes closed.
Oh my gosh.
So just a really neat scene. That's a just incredibly beautiful movie visually. If you've never seen it, and it's really got some neat stuff regarding
What was
the
the name of it?
Kundan. It's Kundun. Kundun. And I'm pretty sure it is freely available on YouTube right now, and it might be available on Netflix. But yeah, great movie.
Didn't they have a little bit of the real Dalai Lama at the end? Or in there at some point? Seemed like they...
There may have been like in the sort of the extra,
Yeah, there was some.
kind of the extra stuff on the DVD, but yeah, just beautiful stuff. So, well, why don't we get ready for our meditation practice together?
She just want to put her down.
Yeah, so take a moment to get comfy.
And we'll watch it together.
Yeah, great movie. Yeah, just a great movie. Starts off with a group of Tibetan monks searching for the next Dalai Lama after the previous one, 13th Dalai Lama, had passed away. So their tradition in Tibetan Buddhism is that the Dalai Lama will be reincarnated, and so they have to go find this reincarnated Dalai Lama, and they go through a series of tests to see if this is the right person. It's kind of a neat thing. So the current Dalai Lama, which I thought was really nice to hear, he said that when he leaves that the next Dalai Lama may very well be a woman, so they should be looking. So I thought that was kind of a neat thing. That's one thing about Buddhism, really in all of its different forms, whether it's the Tibetan or Zen or any of the other forms. It's really one of the most equality-based philosophies, or if you want to call it a religion, you can call it a religion. But the equality in it is just amazing, and I think that's one of the things that's so beautiful about it. So, but okay, if everybody is comfortable in your posture, we'll get ready to start our meditation together. Just a few basics. Check in with your body and look for symmetry so that you're not using all the muscles on one side of your body to hold yourself up. You can sit with your back straight. A visual image I shared, I think last week, was if you imagine that your sit bones and your legs are roots of a lotus flower, and they're rooted in the soft sand on the bottom of a pond, and your spine is the stem of the lotus flower coming up through the water, and your head is the lotus flower above the water. And so the buoyancy of your head brings your spine to a straightness, but there's also flexibility with it. It flows with the current. So it's a straightness, but also flexibility and softness. So that's maybe a helpful image to think of your spine. And then you can let your head, your lotus flower, let that tilt forward ever so slightly by tucking the chin, and that takes some of the strain off the neck and off the back, the upper back. So then we close our eyes to eliminate the visual distractions, just like the group of monks in the movie, and we let our breath be completely natural, however it wants to come and go. And if possible, breathe through your nose. That will be helpful as we go further into the practice. So with that, I'll sound the bell and we will begin. Follow the sound of the bell. Follow it as it fades into silence. And let the silence be a very warm and welcoming invitation to turn your senses inward. And this is an opportunity to put down the habit of the mind, which is a helpful habit during the day, during busy times, to be engaged in the outside world. But now we take the opportunity to turn the senses inward. And a good way to do that is by becoming aware of the feeling of just being present in your own body. So there's a feeling of sitting here or laying here. There's a feeling of occupying your body and being present in it. So just focusing on that simple thing, turning the senses inward. And you also become aware of the natural stability of your own body, the solidity and the reliability of that feeling of presence in your own body. It's always available to you. It's always accessible. So this is a helpful thing. It helps build confidence in the practice. But with the awareness established, the presence in our body, let's bring our awareness together up to the top of the head and to the area of the scalp. And we'll begin by just opening up the awareness to any of the physical sensations in the scalp. So with patient, attentive awareness and a willingness to be objective, just allow awareness to become aware of any of the physical sensations. So commonly there will be temperature sensations in the scalp. It might be warm or cool. Sometimes there's a feeling of air movement. Sometimes there's a feeling on the surface of the skin, just a little tingle or an itch or a pulsation. So you may feel any of these or you may feel none of these, but the practice is to be aware and just be watching attentively. As you're observing, if you notice any tension anywhere in your scalp, you can release that. Allow the tension to leave the body, and then continue to observe the sensations. We're not looking at the tension being released as the end goal of the practice. It's just part of the ongoing practice and the continuity of awareness. So now from the scalp, we can begin to guide the awareness downward into the forehead. Feel it moving down into the temples. And really see if you can feel it, that movement of awareness. There's kind of a soft, warm flow as that awareness moves from part to part. So you feel it passing through the eyebrows and into the eyes. And now illuminating these areas with awareness. Again, you're just opening up to physical sensations, whatever is true for you in this moment. Sensations arise and last for a few seconds and pass away. Sensations come as awareness of temperature or air movement or sensations on the surface of the skin. So we observe these, and we observe these with objectivity. There's no need to overthink this practice or evaluate. We're just aware. This is the sensation in this part of the body. And then if you become aware of tension being held, we don't look at tension as something bad or as the enemy, but we look at it as something that is not needed at this time, so we can release it, allow it to leave the body, and then we stay with the sensations in the forehead and temples and eyebrows and eyes, just observing, remaining aware. And now from the temples, you can begin to guide your awareness downward into your ears, and then open up awareness to all of the sensations in the ears. The ears are the sense faculty that is knowing sound, but also there are the other sensations in the ears, oftentimes temperature. The ears are very sensitive to temperature and to air movement and to sensations on the surface of the skin. And we can allow the awareness to flow forward from the ears into the face. Feel it moving through the cheekbones, further into the face. And then from the eyes, we can observe as the awareness flows softly down through the nose. And just feel it moving down through the lips and mouth and chin, observing the sensations of the body, not worrying about finding anything in particular, not worrying about something you shouldn't feel. Just open awareness to whatever is happening in the present moment, with no resistance, with no grasping, just aware, just aware. And with this attitude, this light attitude, this gentle attitude, any tension we encounter, we just release it with real compassion and kindness. So if the jaws are tight or the lips are pursed or any of the areas of the face have tension, we just let that go. We find that we can just notice it and allow it to leave the body, and it will do it. It will leave the body. And now from the chin, we can begin to guide the awareness downward into the neck. And again, try to feel that flow of awareness. It helps with this continuity that we practice. So you can feel the throat and the front of the neck. Maybe release any tightness that you experience in the throat. Then you move to the sides of the neck and the back of the neck, observing sensations. Depending on how you're sitting or laying, you may feel contact on the back of the neck between the cushion or the floor or the chair. We allow the awareness to move down from the neck into the shoulders. Let it spread out throughout the shoulders. And again, just observe the sensations in each part of the shoulders. Here we might encounter the sensation of contact between the shoulders and the chair, or maybe the sensation of contact between your skin and your clothing. And aware of these sensations, if you notice tension, perhaps the shoulders are shrugged, we just release that tension. Let the shoulders drop. Let the body be at peace. And from the shoulders now, we can guide the awareness downward into the upper arms and spend a little time with the different parts of the upper arms. First with the biceps, the sensations there and releasing tension. Moving inward to the inside surface, noticing sensations, releasing tension. Sometimes you'll find areas of the body where there's no apparent tension, but it can be helpful to just release it anyway. And sometimes you'll be pleasantly surprised by the sense of relaxation that comes. And then moving the awareness around to the back side of the arms now, to the triceps, and then moving around to the outside part of the upper arms, from the shoulders all the way down to the elbow joints. Just observing, letting go, releasing, being with the sensations of the body. And then feeling the awareness as it moves down through the elbows. Feel it as it moves slowly through the forearms, illuminating each inch of the forearms with awareness as it passes slowly downward. Noticing sensations and letting go of tension. And moving the awareness down into the wrists, feeling it pass slowly through the wrists into the hands. And then we can investigate the different parts of the hands, the heels of the hands, and then the palms of the hands. The sensations are just a little different. We can move around to the tops of the hands, being aware, observing, being interested, really remaining interested in the sensations and in the experience of awareness. And then moving awareness through the fingers and thumbs, bringing it downward to the tips of the fingers. And then we spend just a few moments observing the fingernails themselves, observing patiently and attentively to see if we notice any sensations, something subtle, sometimes something barely noticeable, but we just observe. And then from the fingernails, we will move our awareness up to the top of the chest. So we'll maintain the continuity of awareness as we move, Notice the intention to move awareness to the top of the chest. And then starting across the collarbones, you can let the awareness begin to flow down. Feel it moving through the chest, through the tissues and muscles of the chest, all the way down until it reaches the base of the sternum. And then from there, feel it as it expands outward through the rib cage. Just this awareness of sensation and this continuous letting go of tension. We create this wonderful, healthy habit of meeting tension with release. Not with aversion, not with disliking or resistance, but just a complete letting go. Tension is observed, I release. Now we can bring awareness up into the underarms. And from the underarms, feel as the awareness moves downward through the sides of the body. Feel it moving down all the way to the waist, illuminating all of those sensations. Let the tension go. And then from the waist, you can bring your awareness forward into your belly. Spend a few moments observing the belly as it rises and falls with the breath. There's a feeling of expansion and contraction sometimes. Sometimes there's a feeling of the movement of your clothing against the skin of your belly. And if there's any tightness at all in the belly or you're pulling it in, just release it right now. Let it be completely free and relaxed. Just like a toddler's tummy, just free and relaxed. And then from the belly, again, we'll maintain this continuity of awareness and this awareness of the intention to move to the top of the back. So we'll move awareness around to the base of the neck, at the top of the back, and then let it flow down. Feel it moving down through the shoulder blades, through the upper third of the back, through the spine and the upper third of the back and the shoulders. And then we can let the awareness drift down further to the middle third of the back, feeling the sensations, perhaps contact, perhaps temperature sensations, sensations on the surface of the skin. And then we can move down to the lower part of the back, the lower third. Again, just opening up awareness to whatever is true in this moment. There's no sensation that needs to be experienced. There's no sensation that shouldn't be experienced. This is just the moment-to-moment awareness of your experience in the body, in the present moment. And sometimes in places in the body, the sensations that we run across are sometimes unpleasant. Sometimes there's some discomfort or some fatigue. And many of us experience that in the back. And when we come upon these difficult sensations, the habit of the mind is to usually develop some sort of aversion, some disliking, some resistance, because none of us likes the experience of pain or discomfort. But what we discover as we investigate these sensations is that our awareness is really quite expansive and is in fact unlimited, and that discomfort or pain or fatigue make up only a tiny portion of the overall experience. And so we find that we can just open up awareness and allow as much space as those difficult sensations need to just be as they are. We don't need them to change. We don't reject them because we dislike them. We just allow space for them to be without resistance, and we find that that makes them much more bearable. Sometimes that relieves all the discomfort, because the discomfort lies more in the mind than it does in the physical body. So now from the lower back, we can begin to move awareness downward into the sit bones. Feel it spreading through the hips, throughout the pelvis. Maybe you'll notice the sensation of bearing weight as you're sitting or laying. Have that feeling of bearing weight. Other sensations anywhere in the pelvis, just observing. Tension, noticing and letting go. Just remaining present, objective, aware. And from the pelvis, extending awareness downward into the thighs now. And spending just a moment on the top surface of the thighs. The sensations there, if your hands are resting on your thighs, you may feel that. If there's tension, you can release it. And then we can rotate the awareness aroundward to the outside surface of the thigh. Again, observing and releasing. Then moving to the underside, observing and releasing. And then finally the inside of the thighs, from the tops all the way down to the knee joints. Just observe, let everything go. Let the awareness flow through the knee joints now. And if there's any discomfort in your knees, again, just try to work with that expansiveness of awareness and how liberating and freeing that is. And from the knees, we guide the awareness downward and feel it in the calves. We move a little further, we feel it in the shins. We're still observing sensations as we move and just letting tension go. And then we move downward a little further into the ankles. And then from the ankles down into the feet, into your heels. And sometimes the heels have sense impressions from walking, from being in shoes. You might feel that. You can move into the soles of the feet. Maybe there's a temperature sensation here or a sensation of perspiration. Moving to the balls of the feet. And then around to the tops of the feet. Feeling, observing, releasing, and moving into the toes, and then finally into the toenails. And let's just hang out at the toenails for a few moments, just watching patiently, attentively, just observing whatever comes up, any sensation, however subtle. We're aware. And now from the toenails, we'll move the awareness together back up to the top of the head. Again, maintain that continuity of awareness. It can be helpful to note the intention to move awareness. And once your awareness is back in your scalp, at your own pace, you can just begin to move your awareness back down through. So move it through the head and the face. You can move more quickly if you prefer, or continue to move slowly. But just try to move through part by part so nothing's forgotten. Do the same practice of just noticing sensations And then noticing and letting go of the tension. And some parts of the body you'll find tension has returned. You may have let it go just a few minutes ago, and now tension is back. Maybe in the jaws or the shoulders or the belly. We all hold tension in different places. But if you become aware of tension returning to the body, this is actually a very helpful observation. Because when we experience difficult things during the day, challenges at work or in relationships, frustrations, fears, things that make us sad or angry, things that frighten us, all of these things, they cause an emotional reaction, and the emotional reaction leads to a physical reaction. The body tightens up. We hold tension as a way of protecting ourselves, as a way of kind of bracing ourselves against the difficulties of the world. And so now, when we find these places of tension, we realize that by the tension being there, it's really replaying or reminding us of the difficult emotions that caused it to be there in the first place. And most of the time, this happens at the unconscious level of the mind. So you're not aware of the active process, and the result is just a feeling of dis-ease or anxiety, or just kind of a feeling that something's not quite right, even though we can't put our finger on it. So noticing this tension, it's wonderful. We just release it again and again. And we know we are setting ourselves free, and we're beginning to develop this positive habit energy of releasing, remaining peaceful and equanimous at all times. Now, once you've had a chance to move your awareness through your body, let's all bring our awareness together up to the nose and up to the little patch of skin beneath the nostrils and above the upper lip. We'll focus very attentively on that little spot. Just focus awareness there for a moment. And then from here we can expand the awareness just a little bit further until it expands into the rings of the nostrils. We're feeling awareness there. And again, awareness, moving awareness, is awareness of sensation. Awareness of sensation. And from the rings of the nostrils, we move a little further into the nasal passages. So now we have this triangular area of the nose. We have all of our awareness focused here. And let's just be aware of the movement of the breath in and out through the nose. Just be aware. As you're breathing in, be aware enough to know that you're breathing in. As you're breathing out, be aware enough to know that you're breathing out. And we breathe all day long, all night long. Very seldom do we notice this is the in-breath and this is the out-breath. And as we observe the breath, try to stay with the full duration of the breath. So staying with the breath as it starts to go in, as it reaches its maximum intensity, and then it starts to slow down, and it pauses, and then it reverses direction and it becomes the out-breath. And so we stay with the out-breath. As it begins to come out, it kind of reaches its maximum, and then it slows and tapers, pauses, and then it becomes the next in-breath. And this is the continuity of awareness of the breath. Breathing in, you know that you're breathing in. And breathing out, you know that you're breathing out. And sometimes you'll become aware that your in-breath is a bit longer. Or sometimes you'll notice the in-breath is a little shorter. And the same is true of the out-breath. Some are longer, some are shorter, some feel deeper, some feel more shallow. Sometimes you'll notice, if you're very attentive, that maybe more air moves in through the right nostril, or more air moves through the left nostril. So you're aware of the intensity of the breath in the nostrils. And throughout all of this, anywhere within the triangular area of the nose, be aware of the sensation of touch. There's a feeling of touch as the breath moves in and out. The feeling of touch as the breath moves in and out. And if we investigate that feeling of touch, we may become aware of even more subtle sensations. Again, on the in-breath, maybe the air feels just a little cooler than it does on the out-breath. It feels a little warmer. On the in-breath, the air feels just a little drier as it goes in. And then on the out-breath, the air feels a little more moist as it comes out. So we're staying with all of these sensations of the breath, the touch of the breath, the movement of the breath, for the full duration of each in-breath and each out-breath. And this is the focus, the object of our meditation at this time. So we remain focused here on the triangular area of the nose. And after a while, for all of us, distractions arise, sometimes in the form of sounds. We'll just hear something and the awareness moves away from the breath and goes to the sound. And we find we're curious or we're thinking about it. So in the moment that you notice that, the moment of noticing a distraction, this is a wonderful moment in the practice because it allows you to bring your awareness back to the breath. So you're training the mind to stay focused on the breath. And at the same time, simply by moving your awareness back, you're able to let go of the distraction quite completely in a very effortless way. So as you continue to observe the breath once again, renew your focus on the triangular area of the nose. Maybe distractions come up in the second way, which is in the form of physical sensations. You might feel an itch on your face or a little bit of a pain in your knee, and that pulls awareness away from the breath. And so we respond to that by simply guiding the awareness back to the breath and just releasing the focus on the distraction. Return to the breath. Remain aware. Don't ever be upset about being distracted. It's a natural part of the practice, and it's a part of the practice that strengthens us. And sometimes you'll discover distractions in the form of the mind just thinking, remembering something you saw or heard, and the mind just drifts away. At some point you notice that. In that moment of noticing, a wonderful moment, you guide awareness back to the breath, back to the triangular area of the nose, and you just reestablish awareness. Letting go of the thoughts of the mind without developing any sort of animosity, just being aware. Well, let's practice together for a few minutes in silence, just staying focused on the breath, noticing distractions and returning. Let's do this for a few minutes together, and then I'll sound the bell to end the meditation. Great job, everybody. Meditation is it's a little bit of work, isn't it? Sometimes you'd think it's just, boy, I get to sit here or lay here and do nothing for a half hour. Well, there's actually a lot to it. It is work. We'll take a minute break here. There's tea in the kitchen, as always, if anybody's interested. Take a little time to stretch and move around in your bodies.
Last time I'll be sucking in a piece of candy and let it dissolve and start choking on it.
You made it the whole way.
Yeah, what a wonderful space this is turning into, with just slowly more cushions and more chairs and more people. Just really, it's really getting wonderful.
Yes.
And a lot of great yoga classes taking place here during the week. A lot of really neat people that I haven't met before that coming and teaching. Just it's really special.
Have a handout? A new one?
Yeah, what I have is two. So this is whoever didn't get one last week. So I'm not sure if I have enough.
I brought mine from last week, so
Okay.
I'm fine on that.
Good deal. So, and if we're missing any, I can print them before we leave tonight.
Anybody else? Sometimes it feels like double.
Yeah, that paper's a little thicker, so it's sort of hard to
Yeah,
judge.
sometimes it's double.
Yeah, and I don't know, was Elaine here last week? Oh, I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
I was here
Yeah.
last
Was
week.
she? Okay. And then this is for this week, and it's kind of a supplement to the one that we got last week. So yeah, that we can pass that one out as well.
Were you here last week?
Having a spot of tea.
Hot water.
Where I was yesterday.
And Joni was here last week. And so taking that break for a minute and getting tea is kind of the equivalent of what I do with, I've done meditation with third graders. And after you get them to sit still for a little while, I'll usually say, okay, everybody freak out. And so they'll all do that. They'll all freak out. So this is kind of our adult version of that. Everybody gets to freak out.
You know, all three of them are leaders here.
Everybody gets to freak out. Thank you.
How come we never tell us to do that?
Well, it's kind
We
of
might be surprised.
yeah, I suppose. Maybe next week. Maybe next week. We'll give the signal. Okay, freak out. Everybody freak out. All right. So last week we began our talk on noting, insight, and equanimity. And so really what the focus of the talk last week was to introduce this, this tool called noting that we have in our meditation practice. And this is a really helpful tool. We can use it as kind of on an as-needed basis, but it's very helpful. So we got through the first 2+ pages last week. And so I guess what I'd like to do is I'll just read the first 2 pages to you, just to bring everybody up to speed on it, and then we'll talk about the remaining 2 pages, as we normally do. But this will be a refresher. So through our normal meditation practice, samatha and anapanasati, that's what we just did together. We have developed the ability to remain focused on a single object to the relative exclusion of all others. And so that single object is the different parts of the body and the sensations within them, and then moving to the breath and focusing on the breath. And that becomes our object of meditation, where we just stay with the breath for the remainder of the meditation in most cases. So in a sense, we're training the mind to stay put, and usually on that triangular area of the nose. And this type of training helps us see that we're not just helpless spectators subject to whatever the mind wants to think about, but that we can direct the mind toward equanimity, and that makes every area of life more pleasant. So this is really a good practice. We are strengthening our mind. We're strengthening the mind's ability to focus on what it is we want to focus on, which also enables us to not focus on the stuff we don't want to focus on. Because many times we'll focus on something that's really kind of terrifying, or just something we hope isn't going to happen, or something that worries us. And so this ability to focus the mind and to do it with a softness and a compassion and a sense of goodwill, this is just very important, because we're able to do it then without creating any negativity, you know? So it's like when I talk about we release the tension, and when we release the tension, we're not doing it with any animosity, you know, we're not doing it with aversion. It's just, oh, I notice there's tension here. I release it. I release it. You know, that image of the butterfly, it's always helpful. That's what we're doing. We're just letting it go. And we find tension really does respond to that it leaves the body. Otherwise, if it's like we're trying to drive it out, trying to scare it out, well, then we're creating more. So this is important, an important part of the practice. And then one issue that all of us face is what to do with thoughts and distractions when they arise. And as you know, because we just did it, we train for this by being objectively aware of what the mind is doing. And then when it wanders, we redirect it back to the nose and the movement and sensations of the breath. And this simple approach is often sufficient, but there are times when we need a little more help. So there can be times where something is happening in our lives where, we're really worried, or we're really preoccupied with something that's going on, some relationship dynamic, some big issue that we're facing. And we all have that. It happens all the time. It happens often. So what do we do when we're experiencing those things? Is there something we can use that will help us? So just a little sort of terminology here before getting into that. There is this thing that we have talked about called kilesas. Kilesas is a Pali word that is usually translated as afflictive emotion. Afflictive emotion. So it can be very difficult to remain objective and equanimous in the face of thoughts that are particularly troublesome and incessant. In the canon, these troublesome thoughts are called kilesas, which translates as afflictive emotions. And the experience of them is often described as mental torment, right? So anybody that's had that experience, you know what that mental torment feels like. It is a very difficult thing to go through. So when we need some additional help to subdue a mind that is plagued by afflictive emotions, we can use the technique called noting. Okay? So the technique called noting, it's a use it when you need it. Use it when it's helpful. It does not have to be a constant part of the practice. Because many of the times when we're meditating and we realize we're distracted, just that, I'm noticing I'm distracted, I'm moving awareness back to the breath, back to the nose. A lot of times that just works. That's all the more you need. And so that's great. So working to train the mind on that level is, that's the first place to go. Try to use that first and strengthen that ability in the mind. But then noting is the technique of identifying and subvocally noting thoughts and feelings as they arise in the mind during meditation practice. Okay, and the notes themselves are short. They're not sentences or like descriptive, verses or anything, but they're short. Usually it's just a word or two. And they're kept fairly general too. So we're not loading up these notes with a whole lot of emotional energy, but the notes are more, they're a little more generic. And so by noting, what we're doing is we're objectifying thoughts and emotions so that we can sit with them and observe them without reacting. And one of the things that leads to is that it enables us to use the wisdom mind. So that's the opposite of the reactive mind, the part of us that we've kind of habitually fed for much of our lives. When we subdue and objectify those thoughts, we allow the wisdom mind to come in. And the wisdom mind will help us to work through these very difficult afflictive emotions. So we observe these without reacting. So noting during meditation. Now, we might be sitting, and let's say we get through the body scan part of the meditation, so that, couple of the important purposes of samatha, the body scan part of the meditation, is that we are getting in touch with the naturally occurring sensations of the body so that we know what they are on an ongoing basis. We are aware of what it feels like to be in the body. Because a lot of times we're sort of disconnected from our own bodies, and we only get in touch with them when something is particularly problematic. Like, boy, I'm having an anxiety attack, and all of a sudden I'm aware of how my body feels. Or, my leg is injured, and all of a sudden I'm really aware of how my body feels. And then the rest of the time we're kind of tuned out from it. We're not really connected with it. So when we establish this kind of baseline, this continuity of awareness of the sensations of the body, how they come and go, we can become aware of little aches and pains or things like that that show up in the body, and we realize, yeah, I guess I don't have to be swept away by that pain. I can notice it, and then I can allow this expansive awareness. I can just allow this to move through the body. I have enough room in my consciousness that this little pain can be here just like it is, but I can keep moving through, and I can keep releasing tension, and we can peacefully coexist. So that's one of the parts of this samatha meditation, and why we're doing this calm abiding. But then the other part of it is, and one of the things the Buddha said about this particular practice is that you need a place to go, and I'm paraphrasing wildly, but you need a place to go that is enjoyable and pleasant, and you need to have access to it all the time. And so the body is that place. We start to find refuge in our own body. And that's why I like to remind us that when we start to turn the senses inward, there's that sense of stability. There's that sense of solidity. There's a reliability to the body. And so we can return to it over and over, and when we do these practices, it's pleasant. Samatha is pleasant. It's a pleasant experience, and so it's a good option for us to take if we're particularly troubled or worried. So that's one of the beautiful things about samatha. Okay, so if we're sitting in meditation, we've gone through the samatha practice, and now we're in the breathing meditation part of the practice. And let's just say you're doing this for an extended period of time. Maybe you decide that you're going to go 45 minutes, or you're going to go an hour. Or maybe you sit down to meditate at a time when there's just a lot of difficult stuff going on in your life. So either way, these might be times when just the simple noticing and returning the awareness to the breath isn't quite working for you. So what you might notice is, or what you might do is just to practice this noting. So you'll notice, and you'll note this way, you just say it to yourself subvocally, thinking, or remembering. And then you just watch. So you might say thinking. Watch the thought objectively for a moment or two. See if it's still there. If it is, you might say thinking again. Oftentimes, just by focusing and by noting in this way, that's enough to kind of derail that thought and let us move back to the breath. So these notes, just very simple. Thinking, remembering, or you might notice yourself reacting. Hey, I just heard a sound and it startled me, and now I feel angry. That would be, reacting. Or imagining. You're sitting in meditation, and rather than following the breath, you're kind of fantasizing about something that would be even better than this, imagining, or planning. I have so much to do. Planning. So what we're doing, again, this is a way of being aware of what's going on in the mind at any given time, but then objectifying it. If it's any of these emotionally charged things, any of these emotionally charged thoughts or mental objects, we're objectifying them, we're noting them, and that helps us to observe them objectively. So noting this way is often enough to help us remain objective and let go of thoughts, and especially reactions, right? Because that's kind of the big thing. We'll have thoughts, but it's the reactions to those thoughts that are usually the thing that leads to the suffering. The thought itself often leads to a reaction, and the reaction is the cause of the suffering. And the word for that reaction is sankhara, which we've used before. So sometimes if you find that your thoughts and emotions are especially charged, or they're not going away by using the simple noting, then you can get a little more specific. So you can maybe say, okay, anger, I'm aware of anger. Fear, and you continue to watch, and you notice that after a few moments that feeling of fear is passed away and it's maybe replaced by some other experience, jealousy, sadness. So it's okay to go a step further and start to identify these, be a little more descriptive, but avoid personalizing them. So what you don't want to do is add the story to it, like, I'm angry because this person said this horrible thing to me, and this person is just despicable, and if you're starting to do that, then you're really kind of pumping this full of energy. You may recall that word upadana, which means fuel, and that's like the mental fuel that we add to afflictive emotions that kind of keeps it going. So just be aware of that and avoid the personalizing of any of these notes. So some important things about noting: remain objective and equanimous. So in objectivity, you're just observing what's there. You can think of it like a scientist who's out observing animals in the wilderness, and so you've got a clipboard in your hand and you're just taking notes, And so you see two animals interacting, and you're not saying, well, that evil gazelle is now interacting with the really nice tiger, and you're taking down facts, you're objective, and that's what we're trying to do with this noting. Remain objective. That helps you remain equanimous. If you're objective, you're not caught up in it in an emotional way, and so you're able to keep the balance of the mind. So noting is a little bit like putting a thought or an emotion in quarantine.
Can I ask about, I'm having the opposite problem with that. I'm feeling so good and I'm so relaxed that I feel like I'm gonna drop down into sleep. Like I used to go off into a dream, and I don't, other people probably have felt that too, where it's like, and then I almost feel like I gotta start thinking about something so I can wake myself. But I'm feeling so good and so relaxed, but I can feel that thing in my body before you kind of go to sleep.
Before you doze, you
Yep.
just start to feel that happening.
So what do you think then?
Well,
Sleeping.
what? Yeah. Sleeping. Well, no, you can absolutely note drowsiness, sleepiness, because this is part of the experience too. So you don't get to a point where you say, okay, now I'm no longer gonna note things, or I'm no longer gonna label things. So if that's happening, you can be aware, and then you might do something to kind of rouse yourself a little bit. So one of the things that often works is to increase your breathing through the nose. Yeah, kind of increase the intensity. You take 3 or 4 really deep in breaths through the nose and then let them out. A lot of times that's enough to kind of get you awake again. I shared the story that Jack Cornfield told when he was a ordained monk studying with Ajahn Chah, and he went to Ajahn Chah and said he had a problem of every time he would meditate now he would start to fall asleep, because they were sleeping so few hours in the night. They were getting up at 4 a.m. and doing a lot of meditating. And so Ajahn Chah told him to go sit on the rim of the well a little further out inside of the compound there. So he went and sat there with his back facing the open well, and it was a significant drop. And so he knew, well, if I doze off, I'm going in that well. So he stayed awake. It was enough to keep him alert. So you probably don't need to,
Well, your voice is relaxing too, and calming. And
Yeah. Yeah, which is good. I appreciate that
it
because
is a good thing,
sometimes I'm
but I
able to
just-
calm people down.
That's one of the reasons why I
Mm-hmm.
don't think I should
Yeah.
go down, because I might.
Yeah, so you look at it as, okay, I'm relaxing, and that's a wonderful thing. This is something we try to cultivate, which is this peacefulness of body and mind. And so sometimes that expresses itself with a drowsiness or a tiredness. And as I often say, if you're able to start to doze off in a room full of people that you don't really know very well, well, that's pretty good, right? That's pretty good. So you don't have to beat yourself up, but you just notice, oh yeah, sleepiness, sleepiness, drowsiness, drowsiness. And we know that the benefit of the practice comes from continuing to do it. So if you do fall asleep while you're meditating, well, it's not the end of the world, but that's a time where you're not doing the practice, which is to continually realign the mind with awareness of the object of meditation. So hopefully that
Thanks.
helps a little bit. Back to the noting, you can remain with the thought or emotion you're noting until it passes away, and then return to following the breath or whatever you were using as your object of meditation at that time. And there's an advantage of this too, because it helps you see the impermanent nature of your thoughts and emotions. I mean, you can think that your thoughts are just all day long, I think about this one thing. But if you observe it objectively, you realize, yeah, I think about that sometimes, but then I'm thinking about other things. And you realize that thoughts arise and then they pass away. And thoughts arise and then they pass away. And I was going through a period of some particular emotional anguish and distress, and just feeling like, yeah, this is the only feeling I'm having. It's just, this feeling of pain, of pain, of pain. And I began to notice, now there are these moments where that's just gone, and suddenly I'm with nature, or I'm looking at the scenery. But I clearly had this awareness that these thoughts and emotions are impermanent. And so when I saw firsthand that these things passed away, sometimes only for a couple of seconds and then they were back, but as soon as I saw that they were passing away, it was like I knew I had a toehold here, that this was the beginning of coming out of this, because I knew that this was not permanent. So seeing the impermanent nature of thoughts and emotions is very helpful. And even if the thoughts and emotions are very positive and very wonderful, seeing the impermanent nature of those is helpful as well, because it does help you to appreciate them more. Emotions like love are wonderful things, and so when we're in a situation where we can express that love to somebody, then that's something we want to be available to do. Again, don't analyze beyond the note. So you're not looking to psychoanalyze yourself. And you don't want to feed the thought or emotion by giving it more fuel. So again, avoid telling the story to yourself. Avoid saying to yourself, I'm angry, but I'm angry because what he did to me and what he said to me. That part is just adding more fuel to the difficult emotions. So we just notice, there's anger. There's anger. There's a feeling of being hurt. A feeling of being hurt. We watch that. We see that it begins to pass away. We move back to the nose. We work that way. And also, noting is an optional tool. So we use it to the extent that you find it helpful. But if you don't need it, then just stay with the standard technique of guiding the mind back to the nose and to the breath. So, because by using probably the most simple and basic part of the technique of returning to the object of meditation, you're strengthening that ability to return and remain focused more so, if that makes sense. So just using that basic tool when you can use it, that's the best way to go. Maybe a way of kind of comparing it to something else would be to say, you don't want to use antibiotics unless you really need them. Otherwise, it becomes difficult for your body to heal itself without them, or you become resistant to them. So in the same way, some of these more advanced techniques of noting or working with it in that way, if you don't need it, then just stick with the simple guiding your awareness back. And that just strengthens you, like doing an exercise over and over. So, getting into insight now in the middle of page 3. This is where we left off last week. The Vipassana. Vipassana is a Pali word. It means insight. Insight. It's a type of meditation technique that requires us to maintain awareness of our bodies and our minds to the degree that we can observe objects making contact with the 6 sense doors and the subsequent reactions that start to arise. So that might sound kind of complicated, but it's really simple. You're sitting in meditation. You're aware when a sound makes contact with your ears. You know, there's contact, there's consciousness of sound. And a lot of times consciousness of sound leads to some sort of reaction. And sometimes the reaction is just a thought like, oh, that's a motorcycle. Or, oh, that sounds like a semi, you know. Or, oh, that sounds like a train going by, the train whistle or train horn. So in a very simple, very basic level, you're just sitting and you're aware of objects. So we call sounds objects, we call tastes objects, we call sights objects. So any of these objects, when they're making contact with one of the senses, we're just aware. And we're aware of the subsequent reactions as they start to come up. And those are called sankharas. And so here's the really neat part. When you're aware at that level, rather than this process going on autopilot and leading you directly into the reaction, you actually have the opportunity to interrupt that and choose to move to equanimity. So really what you're saying is, I'm aware of what's happening here and I'm letting it go. You know, I see you, I see this happening and I'm letting it go. I'm moving to equanimity. So that is greatly strengthening the mind. It's greatly strengthening your practice. You're aware of objects making contact with any of the 6 senses. Remember the 5 conventional senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. So anytime an object makes contact with one of those sense faculties, there's sensation, and that sensation often leads to a reaction. And up until we practice Vipassana, we usually think that the two are just meshed together and that's the inevitable result. But what we start to realize in the stillness of meditation practice is that there's a gap there. And that we can get into that gap and we can determine how it is we're going to respond to these things.
What is the 6th one?
The 6th one is the mind. And thank you for asking, because I would have forgotten. The 6th sense is the mind. And when we say 6th sense, we don't mean it like in the ESP way or something like that, but it's just, if you're sitting in meditation, or if you're sitting right now and I ask you to picture a sour Granny Smith apple, and I ask you to picture that in your mind, and then I ask you to imagine what it would be like to bite into that. There's like a puckering in your mouth maybe even as you're doing that. Maybe your mouth is watering and you can even sort of imagine the sound. So because the mind is so powerful in its ability to imagine things, it can evoke the same sort of response as it would if you actually ate the apple, or actually heard a sound, or actually felt the sensation. So we call the mind a sense in that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, that's helpful to know, the mind being a sense. So these sankharas, they start to arise. Again, sankharas are just reactions, but they're volitional. They're volitional reactions. That's the important thing. They're volitional, meaning you have a choice. You can do them or you can choose not to. Reactions usually show up as craving or aversion in some form or another. So it's like something happens, and like if you're picturing the apple, sometimes you just, that image comes up and then it's gone. You just let it go. But sometimes, let's say you're hungry, you might really start craving that apple. And you really might start, sometimes if you crave something that you want so bad, that craving actually turns into a mild suffering, right? You feel that? It's like, geez, I want that so bad. Like tonight, I'm thinking after meditation, I'm going to go buy pickles. I've been in the mood for pickles. I don't want to have to leave the house after this. I'd rather just stay here and hang out and cuddle in bed, but I'm thinking I'm going out for pickles, So there's just this little, that's just a simple kind of silly thing, but, sometimes that desire, that craving turns into a little bit of suffering.
I'll stay here with you and have one.
Have pickles with me. Yes, and I like the kosher dills, and and that's a wonderful thing. So, and just taking that simple, kind of funny example, what if I got to the store and the kind of pickles I wanted, they didn't have, because there's like one kind that I like. And what if they were out of them? Well, then I'd be kind of, now what? Now what do I do? Then I'd be, bummed out and disappointed. So, again, simple, kind of fun examples, but, really a lot of our lives is this, I am craving something. The flip side of craving is I have an aversion towards something, so it's either I really want this thing or I really don't want this thing. I really want this to stay away or this person to not be in my, consciousness or whatever it might be. So these reactions showing up as, these sankharas showing up as reactions, they're usually a form of craving or aversion, but sometimes they roll into thinking and imagining, and sometimes elaborate stories and dramas start to be created by the mind. Sometimes we find ourselves just fully daydreaming. And that's called papancha, mental proliferation. And that might show up as, and I don't know why, but I always use washing dishes as an example of where this starts. I'll be washing dishes, not really paying attention, and then I'll think of something that somebody said that was kind of maybe a little mean-spirited. And then I'll think, that really hurt me. And what I should have said was this. And if I would have said that, that would have been a really good burn. And then she probably would have felt this way, and then she would have said that. And soon you're imagining this whole argument taking place that never occurred and won't occur, but you find yourself actually feeling it. Your body, you're feeling the tightness in your body, and your chest is constricting, and you just, you kind of feel this fight or flight thing coming up. And it's pure imagination. So this is another thing to be aware of, is just this mental proliferation, or papancha. Now, mental proliferation has a wonderful place in that, like, if you're trying to figure out how to solve a fairly complex problem, then this is great, because you want to be able to think about, okay, the roof is leaking here, and so I wonder if it's, and you're going through all these different things, and you come up with a solution. So papancha, it's often used in its negative sense, in that it's leading us to suffering. And that's what we usually focus on is, the suffering part, right? So we're not worried about the fixing the roof part. We're worried about the part that makes us suffer, the part that makes it hard to get up sometimes and makes it hard to live our lives with happiness. So our task is to let go of the distractions, thoughts, and emotions and stories while remaining equanimous. And so awareness is the key. If you're not aware, well, this is happening on autopilot, happening unconsciously in many cases. And so the reactions are coming up unconsciously in many cases. And then you're just caught up. So it's actually quite easy once you've practiced with it a bit. You can even note letting go. Letting go. You know, you might think of that negative thing. You might note letting go. Letting go. And you can actually feel that happening. And it's a pleasant feeling. Equanimity and the breath-body practice. During the breath-body meditation, and this is a little practice we can do together, we're going to allow our awareness to expand throughout the body a little more, and we can use the natural flow of the breath to do that. But what we do is we keep our awareness focused on the triangular area of the nose, but at the same time we allow our awareness to expand throughout the body. And with this expansive awareness of the body established, then you start to feel the in-breath throughout your entire body, as if every pore was part of the process of the in-breath. And in the same way on the out-breath, every pore is part of the process of the out-breath. So one of the ways that's helpful to do this is maybe you're sitting in meditation, you're breathing, you're following the in-breath, you're following the out-breath. In the West, we tend to think of the mind as being synonymous with the brain and being located in the head. In Eastern philosophy, the mind is also considered to be part of the heart. Heart-mind are together, but also the mind can include whatever is within the field of awareness. So we can expand our awareness throughout the body and actually breathe through the whole body. So just a way that we might do this, right now just join me for a moment. Close your eyes. Close your eyes and just bring your awareness up to the triangular area of your nose like you're accustomed to doing. And just follow the feeling right in the nose. Stay there in the nose, breathing in through the nose, breathing out through the nose, the touch of the breath, the sensations of the breath, breathing in through the nose, breathing out through the nose. And now just gently expand your awareness and breathe through your feet. Just try that, breathing in through your feet. Feel the sensations of that, breathing in through your feet, breathing out through your feet. Breathing in through your calves and shins, breathing out through your calves and shins, breathing in through your thighs, breathing out through your thighs. You're still aware of the breath coming in and out through the triangular area of the nose, but you find you can expand this awareness and breathe in throughout the entire body. You can breathe out throughout the entire body. And so now you're really expanding this awareness of the breath and the sensations of the breath. This can be a very wonderful, very peaceful feeling. Breathing in through the whole body. Breathing out through the whole body. Breathing in through the feet. Breathing out through the feet. So we expand this awareness to the full body, further and further. So we just did kind of feet and we did legs, but then you can expand it to your belly. What does it feel like to breathe through your belly? Again, the air moves through the nose and the mouth most noticeably, but expansive awareness lets us see that we can breathe with the whole body because there's sensation associated with it. Everywhere in the body there's a sensation of breathing in, and everywhere in the body there's a sensation of breathing out. And so if you practice with that for a little while, you might notice that pleasant feeling of presence, a feeling of equanimity, which means you're really not holding on to anything, you're not pushing. There's a feeling of being light and peaceful, a feeling of being stable and quite content. Let yourself experience these pleasant sensations without clinging to them. It's almost like you're surfing on the tip of a wave. You're just going with what's there. So I want to leave it here for tonight. We're close to the end of our time, and I wanted to share a couple of announcements just to keep people up to date before we do our 4 Brahma Viharas. But was anybody able to feel that breathing in through kind of the feet, breathing out through the feet? Isn't that interesting? I mean, you really can. It's like, yeah, all of a sudden there's a great sensitivity there. So you can work with that practice, expanding the breathing through the body. And there's some text here from the Majjhima Nikaya Satipatthana Sutta, words of the Buddha on this breath practice. And so you might want to read that, and hopefully you find that helpful. But let's see if I can even find...
Do we have it?
Yep, it's on the last page of page 4 of not this week's handout, but last week's handout.
Oh.
So it just says from the Majjhima Nikaya Satipatthana Sutta. And then there's the words, breathing in long, one understands I breathe in long. A long in-breath might be the note.
But is it in this format?
Yep. What is the top
Well,
here?
this is the one that just came out.
It's this
Okay.
one here.
What's the front page called?
That's from last week.
Okay.
Yeah, front page should say noting, insight, and equanimity.
Yeah.
And so the last page, and Joni's got the whole stack.
I punched him and I didn't put him in order.
Okay, let me just find my announcements real quick. So, what I was going to mention, some of you may not be aware, but I have been opening the place up at 7 a.m. every morning, Monday through every day of the week, from 7 to 8:30 for open meditation. And that just means the space is open, the door is unlocked, the lights are on, the incense is burning, and this place is just available for anybody who wants to come in here and sit and meditate in a self-guided way. So if anyone is interested in doing that, you're perfectly welcome. It's kind of a traditional thing that meditation centers and temples do. So if that fits into your schedule and you're ever interested in doing it, just feel free to come in and do it. It's really kind of a neat thing to come just meditate, shortly after the sun has come up, and just be present in a place that is dedicated to the purpose of meditation. So, and then my question to you, and you don't need to answer it now, is would there be other times that would be better? Or does anybody think, yeah, if you did that until 9, I'd probably come 3 times a week, or so I'm kind of looking for feedback from people as we're developing the schedule on what would be convenient or helpful times. So I'm not looking for a commitment that yes, you'll absolutely do it, but it's just, if it seems like, boy, this time would probably be really good, and I might be able to make it from time to time. I'm really open to that, and I'm looking for that at this point, so that we develop a schedule here that works for everybody, because I want this place to be, from dawn to dusk. I want it to be a place where people feel comfortable to come and use it. The other thing I'm looking for is if I was to repeat this talk on a second time during the week, what would be a good day to do that? Sunday, Sunday morning, Sunday mid-morning, kind of like a church service. Mm-hmm. I know there's some people who can't make it on Tuesdays, or it's a little sporadic. So the thought is maybe a weekend day would be helpful. So, and not so much looking for an answer right now, but if anybody has any thoughts and they want to share it next week, or shoot me an email, talk to somebody about it, see what they think, let me know. So I'm interested in getting that feedback. I wanted to mention, because one person was not aware of what that box is out there in the community room. Big wooden box. It says donate here, and then above it says Dana. But that is a place where if you're able to donate to the center, You can drop your donations in there, or if you're paying for classes or anything like that, that's where that can go. So we're getting to the point where we're funded by everybody. So any donations are greatly appreciated. But the most important thing to me is that people come. So don't feel like, geez, if I can't donate, for a while, I want you here. It's not, you need to come. And then I just wanted to announce that tomorrow night, many of you may already be aware, but I'm starting a 4-class series called Freedom from Depression. And this is mindfulness-based practices for finding freedom from depression. And so, as many of you know, I've shared, I've had my own struggles with depression throughout my life. And I really feel like mindfulness meditation, this meditation practice, has literally saved my life. I don't think I'd be here without it. And so there's so many things that I've learned and so many things that have been taught to me by others with regard to how to overcome depression, how to work with depression skillfully, that I'll be teaching that as a special class. So if anyone is interested in doing that, it will be tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. We'll go till 8 p.m. and that will be happening for the next 4 Wednesdays. And that is offered as a community education class, but you can also just register right here and do it. So if anybody has any questions on that, you can talk to me. But even better, if anybody wants to come, that would be great. Learn some strategies and do some practices that will be helpful in managing depression, whether it's for you or for somebody in your life who's important, that this may be helpful as well. So again, any questions, you can talk to me, but that class starts tomorrow night, and I think it's going to be a very special one. So I'd love to see some of you. Now from there, let's just take a moment before we go. There is nothing more important than compassion and love and joy and equanimity. Nothing more important. And so let's just all focus on this wonderful feeling that may all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. Because we know what suffering does to the world around us. It causes a lot of delusion, it causes a lot of violence and hate and hurt. And so we cultivate this sincere wish. May all beings be free from suffering and from the causes of suffering. And may all beings be surrounded by loving kindness for everyone. May all beings be joyful. And then may we, in our wisdom, see the joy that other people experience as our own joy. That's my joy too. When I see a couple holding hands, that's my joy because I got to see it. When I see a child laughing, that's my joy because I got to see it. So may all beings be surrounded by joyfulness and happiness. And may all beings be peaceful and equanimous. So at a place in their lives where they are not bound by craving or aversion or attachment, but just free, riding the waves of love and compassion. And may all of you sharing this time with me tonight, I appreciate you all so very much. May you all be truly, truly happy. Thank you so much, everybody. Blessings to all of you. Blessings to all of you.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you. Thank you. Hey, Don, would you mind switching that light on right behind you? That'll light up the parking lot. Yeah, and then the other one will light up the ramp. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we have the handout for next week, so if you think to
Yeah.
bring it, bring it.
I shall.